Living a Healthy Life with your hosts, Ipek and Craig. The show which explores simple things we can do to feel better today than we did yesterday.
Bringing you the most up-to-date information is our mission. Each week, we'll explore different ways to make today the best day of your life.
With me as always is my beautiful bride, Ipek, and my name is Craig. It's all happening this week on Living a Healthy Life. Hello everybody, we are back, and it is good to be in the studio. As always, my name is Craig, and I'm here with my beautiful wife, Ipek.
Hi everybody.
And today we've got an exciting show for you. I don't know if you can tell, but we are excited people.
That's true. We are very excited and excitable.
And we got a lot to talk about today. But before we get into a little bit more, we wanted to thank everybody for listening in last week. And we wanted to share with you our intention for this show and really where kind of it all stemmed from. And that was a general curiosity about our food, right?
Yeah. We, about 5 years ago, became curious and started doing a lot of research. Our dinner conversations turned into sharing the information that we found that day with a lot of excitement, of course, and just really paying attention to what we are putting in our bodies, in the air around us, and on our skin.
It's kind of those three critical environments.
Yes.
It's interesting. I was sitting with a friend of ours having lunch today, and we were talking about research, and we were talking about, there was something that he said, and I looked at him and I said, where are you reading this stuff? And his answer to me was, it's really all about how I do my research. And I mentioned this in the last show, so I think it's worth mentioning again. Searching terms within documents and within articles, much like you would search a word or look up a word you didn't understand in the dictionary in a book that you might be reading, is really key. And digging into the motivations behind and asking questions. His answer to me when I asked him where he gets this and kind of what to key in on was to follow the money. And I think that that's a really good suggestion, even when we talk about living a healthy life and we talk about decisions that companies are making on our behalf. Are they good decisions or bad decisions? Are they good ingredients or not good ingredients? Taking a look at that money train to see, is the company going to save money by cutting corners here? Or is this particular company not operating in my best interests because of money? So it's very interesting, I think, to take a look at that. And I think one of the things we really wanted to kind of convey to our listeners today is that it's all about asking questions and getting curious. And that's really how we got started on this journey. And we're happy to have you along with us. So, Ipek, what are we talking about today?
Today, we're going to be covering the exciting topic of gluten. And what exactly is gluten?
Gluten. Oh, how I love my gluten. And I'm sure there are a lot of listeners out there today that truly love their gluten as well. And I bet there's a bunch that just don't even know what gluten is. And it is certainly a topic that comes up every day. I mean, we hear it every day, but it might not be a topic that comes up every day for you. It might be something you've heard in the news or read in an article. It's certainly a topic that's gotten a lot of flack and has come up over the past couple of years. So we're excited to jump into that today. So what is gluten? Gluten basically is an allergy. It's the body's inability to digest or break down the gluten protein, which is found in wheat and certain other grains, which I'm going to share with you a lot of them today. If you haven't already, grab a pen and paper because we have a lot to go over with you. Gluten intolerance, also known as gluten sensitivity, can range from a mild sensitivity or it can actually be a full-blown, on the other end of the spectrum, a full-blown celiac disease. Researchers estimate that about 18 million Americans have gluten sensitivity. That's a lot of us that are running around that might not know or realize quite what's happening or what's going on with our stomachs, with our digestion, and with our overall health. So what are the symptoms? Well, there are lots of different symptoms that you should and can be looking for, and I wanted to go through just a few of them They're pretty broad, they're pretty general, and you might say, well, Craig, that covers just about everything. And I want to tell you that it's that important. Gluten and a gluten sensitivity, if you have it, can explain a broad spectrum of symptoms that you might be experiencing. And it starts with depression and anxiety. It goes into ADHD, which I don't love that term, attention deficit hyperactive disorder. However, in today's world, if you're experiencing attention deficit hyperactive disorder, or somebody you know may be, it could be gluten. Gluten can be a catalyst to increase symptoms of ADHD. If you experience brain fog, can't think clearly, if you have any type of autoimmune disease, gluten consumption can be linked and has been linked to numerous autoimmune diseases, including just generally low immunity. Right? So if you're prone to frequently getting sick, you should consider gluten as a potential issue. If you have dental issues that are recurring over and over again, things like cavities, canker sores, broken teeth, tooth decay, dentists today are telling us that it's not just sugar that can be leading to those issues, but gluten could be a cause of that. If you've experienced unexplained weight loss or weight gain, it could be gluten. Migraine headaches, skin issues, eczema, acne, psoriasis, any of these can be caused by gluten or having gluten in your diet. A hormone imbalance, adrenal fatigue, joint and muscle aches, extreme fatigue. Right? If you sleep for 11 hours and you still wake up and being exhausted, gluten could be something that you should look into. And of course, some of these digestive issues, which are very directly linked to abdominal bloating and pain, chronic diarrhea, vomiting, constipation. These are all things that you can look into that are possible. Gluten could be possible irritants. Gluten could be a possible source for you to take a look at it. And this is some of the symptoms that might lead to it. But let's Ipek, if you would, just tell us for a little bit about celiac disease, which is really the far extreme.
Sure. Yes, it's definitely on the far end of the spectrum, celiac disease. And so what exactly is celiac disease? Celiac disease is a serious genetic autoimmune disorder where the digestion of gluten actually leads to the decrease in the absorption of nutrients in the body and also damages the small intestines. And we have some astonishing numbers here. It's estimated to affect 1 out of 100 people worldwide. And amazingly enough, 2.5 million Americans are undiagnosed and are certainly at risk for long-term health complications. And what we're seeing currently is that there is no cure for celiac disease. The only treatment is to follow a strict gluten-free diet. And most people report improved symptoms within just weeks of following this strict diet. And although actual intestinal healing may take several years.
Yeah, I think that's an important thing to mention, right? That even though eliminating gluten is really the only treatment that's out there, and within a few weeks, you're seeing an improvement in those symptoms, right? So this is something that if any of the symptoms that I just went through, if you're experiencing any of those, cutting gluten out of your diet can fix and get you feeling better very, very quickly. And certainly in Ipek's case, what was it, like 72 hours, right?
Yeah, 72 hours, and my symptom of not eating gluten and my symptoms, which were the swollen lymph nodes and the acne, went down. It was incredible.
We're going to be back in just a couple minutes. Looking forward to seeing you on the other side of hearing from our sponsors. HealingOils.love is the place for doTERRA certified pure therapeutic grade essential oils.
Essential oils have been used throughout history in many cultures for their medicinal and therapeutic benefits. Learn about how you can use essential oils every day to maintain a healthy lifestyle and keep your family operating at its highest potential.
Join our communities on Facebook and Instagram at HealingOils.love for tips and recommendations on how you can begin using doTERRA essential oils today. And we're back. Today we're talking about gluten. Just to remind you, Oh man, we've talked about what gluten is, what some of the common symptoms are that you can look for. We even talked about the most extreme case of gluten insensitivity or sensitivity called celiac disease. And now we're going to talk about where gluten is found and some common foods that contain ingredients that you need to look out for. And the three big ones, right? Wheat, barley, and rye. Wheat, barley, and rye. Wheat is in just about everything here in the United States. You can find it in just about every processed food. I think the statistic is something like 70% of the foods in the supermarket contain wheat. Barley, you're of course going to find in just about every beer. It's one of the main ingredients in beer. And rye, a nice Jewish delicatessen. You get a pastrami and corned beef on rye. And there you go. It's a form of bread. Again, wheat. But you're also going to find it in pastas. You're going to find it in breads, crackers, just about any baked good, desserts, seasonings, dressings, spices, spice mixes. They often use gluten as a thickener, right? You're going to find it in lots of baked goods and crackers. There are certainly gluten-free alternatives, which we're going to talk about in a little while, but my opinion is you really want to avoid those. We're going to talk about those towards the end of our show today. So wheat, barley, and rye are three of the main things that you want to avoid. And although the exact cause of gluten intolerance is unknown, a lot of the theories revolve around changes in the way that wheat is grown and processed, particularly here in the United States. For those of our friends that are over the pond or in Europe or Turkey that are listening to this, you might not have the same issues or the same amounts of gluten in your diet, right? Or even a loaf of bread you buy in Turkey might not have the same level of gluten as you would here in the United States. And one of the theories behind that, there's a bunch of different theories, but one theory states that wheat is higher in gluten than it once was because it makes bread springier and easier to slice. Another possible cause is the way that wheat is grown to provide a higher yield rate. Basically, it's bred to produce more volume per acre or to make it disease resistant. And I can tell you, in doing a lot of this research over the past 4 years, I can tell you I found articles on both sides from legitimate sources as well. I happen to err on the side of producing higher yields, making it more disease resistant, but needless to say, there's two sides to this research, and I would invite you to do your own. İpek?
I'm going to tell you guys a little bit more about what foods to avoid in a gluten-free lifestyle. And I use the word lifestyle and not diet because this is a lifestyle for us. It's not just a temporary amount of time that we're trying it out. It's become a lifestyle choice for us. So as many of us know, wheat, and also as Craig mentioned, wheat is one of the main staples of the Western and specifically the Mediterranean diet. If you are experiencing any of the symptoms that we listed earlier, here are some of the foods to avoid. This includes, of course, wheat and all of its forms, which include wheat starch, wheat bran, wheat germ, couscous and cracked wheat. And unfortunately, this includes the famous Turkish dish kısır, which now I substitute quinoa instead of the bulgur. And it's actually a more healthier and also delicious option. Others include durum wheat, farro, kamut, matzo, semolina, which another famous and one of my favorite Turkish desserts, şekerpare, are sadly out of the question, but that's okay. We have other options for it. And spelt. Some of the other grains that I would like to name off to you that also include wheat, like Craig mentioned earlier, barley, bulgur, rye, seitan, which is a soy product, and also oats. And oats, it's kind of a little bit in the gray area, I would say. Oats themselves don't actually contain gluten. However, most of the time they're processed in plants where they produce gluten-containing grains, so they may be contaminated. So I would urge you to look for gluten-free oats as another option.
Right, or at least a manufacturer that is committed to gluten-free and is committed to maintaining that they're not contaminated. And again, if you just have a gluten sensitivity, you may be okay. However, if you have celiac, oats would definitely be off your list because of the contamination issues.
Yeah, you don't want to take any risks there.
What else about gluten?
Gluten may also show up as ingredients in barley malt, chicken broth, malt vinegar, and also some salad dressings, as well as veggie burgers, unless they specify that they're gluten-free, and even soy sauce, which when I first found out about that was pretty alarming for me. Soy sauce, I would have never guessed that. There's lots of other foods that are naturally gluten-free, and they include fruits and vegetables, beans, seeds, legumes, nuts, potatoes, eggs and dairy products, corn, rice, fish, lean beef, and also chicken.
Yeah, I think this is one that's probably worth mentioning, right? Rice. Rice protein is something different from gluten protein. So all of your rice grains, for the most part, don't have gluten. So those are A-OK and on the list, and boy, do we eat a lot of rice.
A lot of rice and a lot of quinoa.
Oh, yeah.
In fact, some of the grains that I was just about to go into, quinoa is our favorite grain, and I always have it ready and warm in my rice cooker. So it's a go-to for us. Other grains include amaranth, which we actually use in our cereal. In addition, arrowroot, buckwheat, millet, rice, as we already mentioned, soy, and tapioca.
Tapioca.
Yeah, I make a tapioca pudding with that. It's delicious. So, I think in general, if you are experiencing any of these symptoms we mentioned earlier and want to stick to a gluten-free lifestyle, I recommend and urge you to stick to unprocessed, fresh, whole foods to stay naturally gluten-free.
Right? And you're going to hear that a lot, right? I mean, you hear this as mainstays from dietitians and nutritionists, right? Stay away from the processed foods because now you know many of them contain gluten. Gluten might not be the issue for you, but you still want to avoid those processed foods. And you want to stick to unprocessed, fresh, whole foods, right? That naturally stay gluten-free and just provide you with more nutrients, more minerals, and a much more valuable nutritional content.
And essentially a healthier lifestyle.
That's right. All right, so what do we do when we're eating out?
Yeah, that's a topic to cover.
Oh, man. Okay, so, Ipek and I, obviously, we've been living a gluten-free lifestyle for the past 4 or 5 years, something like that. And we have lots of friends, fortunately, and we love to go out to eat. We live in Southern California. Here in Southern California, in your big cities, Los Angeles, New York, it's real easy to find gluten-free alternatives. But what do you do when you're dining out, right? And I think first and foremost, it's knowing and understanding the ingredients that you need to avoid so that you can look specifically for items on the menu that don't have gluten. And what's really interesting is when you start to look and you start to realize kind of, let's say there are 25 items on a menu, you're going to notice that just about 20 of them have gluten in it, right? So as I was talking about before, not only is there an increased level of gluten specifically in wheat in particular, but the sheer number of dishes that have ingredients that include gluten are at an all-time high. I think one of the best suggestions that you've made and have had for us in the past has been to ask for a gluten-free menu, right? Many restaurants offer gluten-free alternatives and actually have a separate menu specifically for folks that have a gluten intolerance. And I think one of the things that they also ask you on a regular basis, especially when you ask for a gluten-free menu, is they ask if it's an allergen or if it's a preference. If you have gluten insensitivity or gluten sensitivity, you may have a preference. And oftentimes, for Ipek and I, we don't have celiac disease. So when we're out at a restaurant and they ask us that, we'll tell them it's just a preference. That means that they don't have to go through extra cautionary steps back in the kitchen to use knives that haven't been used anywhere else in the kitchen, to use a new cutting board, right? Those subtle, very, very small amounts of gluten in the food are okay for Ipek and I. It might not be okay for you. For us, when they ask us if it's a preference or if it's an allergy, we tell them it's a preference, but that's entirely up to you.
And what I would recommend when eating out is to consider selecting dishes at the restaurants, just like as if you would eat at home. So perhaps grilled meats or steamed vegetables, some of those grains that I mentioned earlier. But I do want to point out to make sure to ask your waiter if there's any gluten in the sauces. That's kind of a hidden spot for gluten, as we mentioned earlier, any sort of sauces.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and foods to avoid for certain are fried foods, those sauces again, or anything that's been fried in the same pan with gluten-containing foods. And those fried foods are so important because, well, first of all, you're frying food, right? So even if you get French fries don't necessarily have gluten in them. However, if there are onion rings that have a wheat breading around it, or other foods that get fried in the same fryer, you could have cross-contamination there as well. So you want to look out for that. Ladies and gentlemen, we want to thank you for being with us today. We're excited, so excited, as always, to have you with us. We look forward to next week.
Thank you for joining us, and I hope that we were able to give you an overview about gluten and gluten sensitivity, and we're sending you love and light.
With love and light. Bye-bye.
İpek Design is a collection of handmade accessories crafted with love and intent. I create each unique piece, setting forth an intention to bring positive energy to the recipient. As I design in my various collections, I charge my creations with positive affirmations for abundance, prosperity, and happiness. Please visit my website, www.ipek.design. You can also find me on Instagram at İpek Designs. Remember, maintaining positive energy is the essence of true happiness.